The views expressed on this program are those of the producers and individuals appearing on this program and do not necessarily reflect the views of the Sun Prairie Media Center staff, its video service providers, or the staff and elected officials of the City of Sun Prairie.
Welcome to Moments of Strength. I'm your host, Mary Kaufman. On this show, we celebrate the incredible resilience of mothers showing up through life's challenges, growing through every triumph, and carving out space for their own passions and identity. We're here to uplift and reassure every mom that you are not alone, and asking for help is a powerful strength. Each episode brings a new story of motherhood's beautiful chaos. I'm happy you can join us for today's inspiring journey. And today's guest is Katey. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Appreciate you coming and kicking off season 2. You're the first episode of season 2.
That's so exciting.
Yeah, very exciting.
Happy to be here.
Thank you for coming. So on this show, we'll talk a little bit about where you come from, your background, and then how did you travel the path into motherhood, and how did you balance your other personal and professional pursuits? Just to learn a little bit about how moms do that differently, and hopefully in doing that we provide strategies and supports and ideas for other moms just through stories of life experience.
Great.
So welcome.
Thank you. I'm excited.
Okay, so tell us a little bit about you.
Okay. So I was born and raised in Madison. And my own parents, my mom is an immigrant from Germany.
Okay.
And she grew up in Southern California and then came to Madison for law school. She met my dad there, and when I was 1, they got divorced.
Okay.
And so I don't remember my parents being together at all. Okay. And then I had step-parents on both sides. I have half siblings, 2 from my dad's side and then 1 from my mom's side. And when I was in high school, they both divorced their second spouses. Okay. So, you know, my upbringing was overall really good. I have great parents. Madison is a beautiful place to grow up. I had a really strong friendship network with kids at school.
Oh, good.
I was involved in sports and did like student council. I loved decorating for the school dances. And I remember my childhood overall being pretty happy. But then, you know, as you reflect back as an adult, you see some things that you didn't see as a kid.
Well, you're really able to pull the thread on something.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, so you were the only child before your parents got divorced.
Yep.
And then gained siblings
yes.
after that.
So I'm the only full blood between my 2 parents. So I don't have any full siblings. And that was probably my biggest struggle as a child. I wanted so badly to have a sibling that would just kind of understand, you know, the step-parent dynamic and, you know, transitioning back and forth between houses. Right. And I remember as a little girl having a pretend twin sister, almost like an imaginary twin sister. Her name was Elizabeth. And I just kind of would play with her when I was really playing by myself. And that actually was a huge influence on my own parenthood journey.
Sure, it usually is. I mean, what we encounter when we're young really affects who we are to our own children.
Totally.
For better or worse, I mean.
Yeah.
But you always learn either what you want to do, what you don't want to repeat, and sometimes you can't help that. And so it's very interesting to sort of look back and see how did that come about.
Definitely, yeah.
Okay, so high school and then?
High school, and then I stayed in Madison. I went to W-Madison. I actually started college as a fashion design major.
Ooh.
And that was really fun, but didn't spark any passion for me.
Okay.
Do
you remember why you chose that?
in high school, I just I liked fashion, I liked clothes,
Okay.
and I just thought it would be a fun industry to be a part of. And I did that at UW-Madison for a year and a half, and I never really connected with any of the other students. I just didn't feel like, for better or worse, they were my people.
Right.
And the work just wasn't very inspiring for me. And then my sophomore year of college, I can't even remember what class it was, but we read Savage Inequalities by Jonathan Kozol.
Okay.
And it's a book about public education and how, he basically interviewed staff and students from inner city schools and then suburban schools and just drew these comparisons between the two. And my mind was blown.
Interesting.
Because I grew up in Madison, where we're kind of middle of the road. It's not a rich suburb, but it's not a true inner city. And I had a great educational career, all things considered. So I just didn't understand the bigger picture of what other kids were facing in this country.
Right.
And I remember, it's one of these memories that just I can see in my mind. I remember staying up the whole night after I finished that book and should I change my major? Should I go into education? Should I want to be a part of this solution? This is a huge problem. And I did change my major.
Well, it must have triggered something in you that, you talked about not having a passion for fashion.
Yep.
And then you get that feeling that maybe this is it. So.
Yeah, so I changed my major. I looked into education, but at that time it was really hard to get into the education school at UW.
Oh.
They only admitted 10 or 15 students a year, and it was a whole thing. So I did political science and women's studies.
Okay.
And then after college, during college I worked at an after-school program for kids in transition or kids experiencing homelessness.
Okay.
And I loved it. The kids were amazing, incredible humans, and just I had a lot of fun with them. And they were going through a lot, and just to get to spend time with them and do fun activities with them was really inspiring.
It's interesting to hear that, because even as you're talking, for these few minutes, you can kind of start to see, the things align. Because I know what you do now and everything like that. So that's just so interesting to see that path, and even to really tie it back to, being a kid who wanted somebody there, to understand. And now you're, where we are in your journey, you're seeking out those ways to be that for somebody else. Yeah,
totally.
So that's great.
Yeah, and I at that time I knew I was going to work with kids. After college, I got a job at Sun Prairie High School as a special education assistant.
Okay.
And so I helped with the most some very vulnerable students with significant disabilities, and just completely fell in love with the students. I worked with some incredible educators who I just really looked up to and thought, I could do this. I could join this group of people. So then I went back to school and got my master's in special education and got certified in regular ed too. And after that, the teacher who I had worked under retired.
Okay.
So I actually got her job. So I went back to my classroom that I had been an assistant in. And it was wonderful.
And when you went back to school, were you still working and going to school at the same time, or fully going to school?
I was fully going to school. I actually worked at a bridal shop. That was
back to fashion, just to make sure.
Just for a minute. I couldn't do both because the classes were during the day and they overlapped. So unfortunately, I had to quit being a special ed assistant. So I went to Edgewood College for just a couple years, and got that, and then was able to come back as a teacher in that same classroom.
Man, that lined up.
Yeah.
Holy cow, the timing of that.
Yes. It was wonderful. I did my student teaching at Wright Middle School in Madison.
Okay.
And then I did a long-term sub at West High School in Madison. So I was in MMSD for about a year, but then came back to Sun Prairie and was so happy to be back in this district. And I loved it. And I have lots of stories of very challenging times being a special education teacher.
Gosh. Yeah, I imagine.
But I mean, teachers, in my view, are superheroes. And I worked with so many amazing people who were doing incredible things for kids. And then the kids themselves were fun and inspiring. And I just loved spending my days with them.
That calling to teach is so selfless, really.
It is, but I don't know. Like in so many ways, I feel like there's some people who kids just make a lot more sense to than grown-ups.
I
and
agree.
I'm one of those people.
You know, I have just spoken a couple of times at the high school.
Yeah.
And I enjoy it because I feel like, well, I want to be there.
Yeah.
And I'm curious about people.
Yeah.
And people of all ages.
Yeah.
So the lens is different. I mean, I don't go there every day, and I'm not subjected to, you know, all the difficulties of that as well. But I find it interesting. I think there's, you know, people who show up and they're there to speak, but that scene kind of is difficult for them because it's sometimes a little chaotic and everything isn't orderly, and maybe you're used to speaking to adults who, you know, so I think you're right. I think there's a quality there where people are drawn to kids.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I think, you know, to me, they're just honest, and I appreciate honesty. It's kind of what you see is what you get, and you're not trying to figure out, like, is there an ulterior motive? Like, what, you know, do they want something from me? It's just very genuine. At least these have been my experiences with kids of all ages. It's just, and, you know, there's challenges, of course. Like, their brains are not fully developed. But I don't know, kids make a lot of sense to me, and I really enjoy their perspectives and their outlook on the world, and just, I want the truth. Like, give me the truth, and let's work through it.
And they can sense that from you. I mean, you know, they know who wants to hear what the real thing is. And we forget we were kids too, and we wanted somebody who wanted to hear that too. So
definitely.
So so good for you for finding something that, you know, lined up with who you were and are. So.
And that kind of is where my motherhood journey started.
Okay.
So I had my first baby in 2011.
Okay.
And so I was teaching at Sun Prairie High School at that time, and took some time off for maternity leave. It was hard to go back. Yeah. I remember my first day back crying. Just crying.
I know, it's so hard.
It was so hard to leave him. And I left him with my sister, so, you know, I knew he was safe and cared for, but I wanted to be with him. And, you know, my whole entire world changed.
Yeah.
Becoming
and all day
a mom.
it's like, what's he doing? Yeah. And he's probably, you know, sleeping mostly.
And what am I missing?
Yeah.
And does he miss me? Does he wonder if I left him? Does he think I abandoned him?
Right. I'm coming back.
Yeah.
It's so hard those first few weeks. I mean, it's always hard, but just like anything, you grow together, but those first few days are challenging.
Yes. And then, you know, I was breastfeeding, so finding time in the school day to pump and keep my milk cold and make sure there was enough, and I was staying on my schedule. I mean, I remember I sat in my classroom bathroom and pumped.
Yeah. Well, this was, you said 2011.
Yeah, 2011. Yeah. So, yeah, just even the logistical aspects changed, and then the emotions are completely overwhelming. But lucky for me, those wonderful educators that I mentioned, they were there, and also moms, very supportive.
Sure.
And that makes a huge difference. But childcare was really hard to find.
I think it still is. I mean, I think as a parent, for me, that was probably one of the biggest challenges was, is there any available, and do I want to leave my child there?
Yep.
You know, so always. And then if you have multiple kids and trying to find,
Yeah. I remember we interviewed different daycare providers, and there was some that were licensed, and my husband at the time said, I wouldn't leave our dogs here. You know, and it was terrifying to find somebody who you could trust to leave your baby with. And for the next school year, we found an in-home that we were both really comfortable with. Another teacher had recommended it, and I feel like that's just
good.
the way. It's word of mouth. And if you don't know people to help you kind of find daycare providers, it's near impossible.
Yeah, it's scary, and even if that daycare would be fine, you have to be comfortable with leaving your child there.
Yeah.
So,
and then so I went back to teaching. So that would have been the 2012-13 school year when he was, I don't know, 8 months old or so, and he went to daycare. And then in the middle of that school year, that daycare closed.
because
They were just stopping doing daycare.
they're like, oh, you found us, and here's another hurdle.
Yes. So I remember, I think it was like Thanksgiving. They were like, we'll be done after winter break. And I'm in the middle of my school year, still a new teacher. My husband at the time was also a teacher. And it was scary because it felt like we were back to square one.
Right. And you have to go to work.
Yep.
So.
Yeah. So I ended up finding somebody else for that second semester. And then I got pregnant with our second son about the same time. So I knew I was going back and forth with myself. So 2 kids in daycare would have been almost my entire paycheck.
Been there. Yeah, it's like,
Was it worth it? And I still missed my son. I missed my son every day.
Yeah.
And it was, and I love teaching and I love using my brain to do things other than parenting. But it was really, really hard. So we talked a lot. I spent a lot of time thinking. And after that school year, so I was about 6 months pregnant with my second child. And my oldest was 1-ish. We decided that I would stay home and do in-home daycare.
See?
So
solving the problem for all those other moms.
Yes. And I was really excited about it at the time. Like I got to stay home with my kids. I was able to watch other kids. And, we had a few obstacles in there. We sold our house.
Just for fun? You're like, hey, this isn't complicated enough.
Well, we actually, part of our parenting journey too was we combined households with my mom.
Okay.
So after, when I was pregnant with my second child, my mom was living alone. And as I mentioned, my husband and I were both teachers. So we didn't have a lot of money. I mean, that was a really scary part of that beginning of motherhood too. Like I remember calling her crying and saying like, we can't afford daycare this week. And she was generous and helpful in that way. But, we started talking like, it doesn't make sense that both of us are paying electricity. Both of us are paying separate mortgages. If we combined resources, that would alleviate some of the pressure. And, just to contextualize too, this was during Act 10. So Act 10 was when a lot of power from teacher unions were taken away. So teachers were kind of in this, like, I don't know what's going to happen state of education. And so my mom always talks about, like, that was her response to Act 10, was to say, I can't help all teachers, but I can help these 2 teachers.
Yeah.
Because we couldn't afford to have a family.
Right.
On those salaries.
That's so important. I just want to touch on that because, you've said a lot there that I think, people watching will resonate. It will resonate with them. But this whole, I can't solve it all, but I can make a contribution. And that's so important for people to know because I think, lots is always happening in the world and you feel overwhelmed and it's too much and you want to fix it, but you can't fix it all. So you feel helpless. Helpless, and then maybe you don't do it. But if you could just help within your little circle, then those people can help within their circle, and it. Yeah. So that's such an important point to make. So.
And I think exactly, like change and optimism and positivity starts in your family, and then in your neighborhood, and then your community, and then your state. Like we have to focus on the local. Because the big national, it's overwhelming and scary. And then if you think about the world, like it's just, I shut down.
Well, and you as one don't have the kind of leverage, to influence something on that great of a scale, but you can start small.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Totally.
Okay, so not to interrupt, but
no, that was
such
great.
an important point.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, so we then, but our house sold much faster than my mom's house.
Okay.
So we had this interim period where we rented. Well, we lived with my grandma for a couple months. We literally moved, this is a good story. Our closing date for our house was my due date for my second child, literally same day. I was due with my second child. My oldest was 1.5, and that was our closing date.
This is a show about resilience, so way to perfectly fit into that.
I remember sitting in the chair at the, like, hugely pregnant, and they were like wanting me to sign all the documents for the closing, and I'm like, I'm not getting out of this chair. I can't move.
To me.
Yeah. And then we moved in with my grandma, and she's wonderful, but I remember being 9 months pregnant and cleaning floors and walls, and you know, I'm bringing my newborn home. I have my 1.5-year-old. We're building cribs. We're got the dogs. I mean, it was a lot.
Was your grandma okay with that?
Yeah, she was totally fine. Good. She had set up shop in her basement, and she was like, "You guys take over the upstairs." Great. Yeah, it was wonderful. Awesome. But then a couple months later, she sold her house.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, it wasn't on the market. It had been, and then she took it off because we were going to stay with her. And then somebody who had seen it when it was on the market called and said, "Actually, I'm really interested." And we were like, okay, you have to take this offer. Like, it wasn't like this time where you can sell a house overnight. This was, 13 years ago when it was a little trickier. And so we said, okay, we can handle this. Yeah. We can do this. So she sold her house. We moved into a rental. She moved with us.
And your mom's house is on the market.
Mom's house still on the market.
So she's at her own house.
Yep, she's trying to sell her house, and we're house shopping at the time too, and that was a really important time too because we were trying to figure out where to go. What school district do we want to raise our kids in? And that felt like such a heavy decision because I felt strongly that I didn't want to move them during their educational
once they started,
careers.
You wanted to kind of keep them in there. Okay,
yep.
Yes.
And I know, kids are resilient and they can move and they can be okay, but I just wanted to go in to kindergarten and go into their school career with the hope that they would stay in the same district. So that was a huge choice because I wasn't feeling completely confident with Madison schools at the time because we did think about staying in Madison. But I also, my kids are mixed race. So he's my ex-husband now, but their dad is Native Hawaiian. Okay. So diversity was a super important piece of our decision making. Of course. And, a lot of suburbs are predominantly white families. And so we were really trying to find a high quality district, which, Dane County, there are lots of them, but also thinking about other factors too. And Sun Prairie stood out. I had worked in the district, and so I felt like I knew the district well. And I think in a lot of ways, Sun Prairie mirrors Madison, and it just felt like a really good fit. But at that time, we sat at the parks. We went to all these communities in Dane County and just sat at the parks and watched the families that were there, had conversations, do we feel comfortable here? Does my husband fit in here?
That's an interesting approach.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we just let the kids play and it was, you can tell a lot about a community from
what happens
public
at the
spaces.
Parks.
Yeah, totally. So that was just an interesting journey and it felt like a lot of pressure to make that choice.
For sure.
So obviously we ended up in Sun Prairie. So we bought a house with my mom. And we moved here when my oldest was 2.5 and my baby was about 9 months. And still doing in-home daycare. Then I got pregnant with our third. Yay! And still doing in-home daycare, just in the depths of toddler babyhood.
Because you have your own,
Yes.
at the end of the daycare day, it's not like you're like, it's
Yeah.
like, two
no.
of you are still here.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm pregnant.
Yes.
So
Yep.
it's a lot. It's 24/7.
It's
never
24/7.
stops.
I went through a time period, and we haven't reached this point yet, but there were 7 years where I was either pregnant or nursing straight. No
yeah,
breaks.
I was a similar, over the course of a decade, was like
Yep.
in this kind of same,
Yeah. So like my daily, I mean, I wore yoga pants and a t-shirt, hair up. Like I didn't, I was fully immersed in kid worlds,
Yes.
baby worlds. Like we had a changing table in the living room. Our house was just toys everywhere. I was in the kitchen, I think, 80% of the time.
For sure.
It's either mealtime or snack time.
Or cleanup time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So do you remember, not to like pry, but do you remember during that time ever thinking about yourself? Not that, this is a thing, there are years where you have to, I didn't let you answer also
okay.
after I asked you a question, but those years, like for sure from like 0 to 5, where that is so important. All the years are important, but those intense years where the development is just firing off, and your kids need you because they're not self-sufficient really in any way. So do you remember during that time at all thinking like, about you? Or do you feel like it was just like this routine, take care of the kids? And
That's a good question. I don't really remember thinking much about myself, but after my third child was born, a couple months after that, a friend encouraged me to join a Couch to 5K group.
Yes.
And I'd never been like, I did sports in high school, but I'd never been like a regular workout person.
Right. Okay.
And so I was like, sure, I'll try this. And, you have to do your homework. So you have to do like 3 runs a week.
Okay.
And I, at first, was like, this is hard.
Yeah. Well, if you haven't been a runner.
Yes. But then, once you start getting conditioned, like I actually really, really enjoyed
that's good.
those runs. And I would go by myself. And I'd say, I got to do my homework. I got to do my run homework. Yeah. And that is the one, like my first memory of kind of like doing something for myself. And so, I was on my third child.
Yeah.
I remember Sundays at nap time going and running errands. And that was like my time to like be alone at the grocery store, Target, like just having that like peace of
You don't even
quiet,
have to think about it. It's just like mindless acts.
where I'm not like keeping people alive.
Yes. Yeah,
So-
just yourself.
Yeah, I think at that time, like errands were my me time.
I think that's probably super
Yeah.
common.
Yeah.
Especially at those ages when your kids are that young.
Yeah, because at nighttime, I'm like, I fall asleep with them.
Yeah. Well, you can't sit
Exhausted.
down.
No.
You can't sit down. You can't lay down.
No.
Be careful reading a book.
Yeah.
You know.
Nope, I don't remember doing any of those things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was just curious about your.
Yeah.
Okay, so.
So, third baby, still doing daycare.
Yeah.
We had debated, and actually, I mentioned my husband was from Hawaii, so we took the kids when my third turned 1. So we took them all. It's a long plane ride.
That is a long.
It's a long plane ride. And I wanted a 4th because we had 2 boys and a girl, and I really wanted my girl to have a sister. And I'm going to loop back to my own childhood because I ended up having 4 kids in 5 years.
Okay.
And I knew I wanted my kids to be close in age,
Right.
and I wanted them to be friends because that was what I missed in my own childhood. And I didn't understand sibling dynamics very well.
Right.
I do now.
Yeah. Well, it's hard. You can't really till you're.
Yeah.
When you're a sibling, you don't pay attention. You care about your
Experience.
spot.
Yeah.
Until you're a parent, unless you study it.
Yeah.
It's hard to understand.
So that was kind of my goal. I'm like, okay, I got my 2 boys and now I have my girl and I want her to have a sister. Like that was very important to me. My husband was like, no, like 3 is enough. And we went to Hawaii that year and we were able to rent a car because there's 3 seats in the back.
Oh, yeah.
So we had 3 car seats like mushed in there. And, you know, during that trip, the kids were so happy to be there. You know, like you could really tell it was just a part of who they were. Even though they don't grow up there, they were so comfortable in the ocean. They were so comfortable with their Hawaiian family. Like they fit right in. You know, it was just kind of this eye-opening time for me that like this is a part of them. And
like genes unlocked.
Yeah, totally. Like, you know, they're all good swimmers. Like it's just.
It's amazing.
It was just really eye-opening for me about this. And I've had a lot of I've done a lot of thinking about kids of 2 races. I didn't think a lot about it before I did it. And now I think about it all the time. And it's really hard. And we can get into that more. But this was an eye-opening time for me of how much they deserved to go to Hawaii and be exposed to their culture and their family and the land and the water. And so during that trip, I said, you're right. Like, let's stop at 3. I want to make sure we can bring the kids to Hawaii often. They deserve this. He deserved that. And so we had decided on that trip to be done. And then we came home and I wasn't feeling well.
So you decided to be done, but
but the universe had other plans.
Sent you a different path.
I was already pregnant. So, and thank goodness, because my 4th, it was a girl. So I got everybody has a brother or a sister.
Yeah,
and,
this is great.
And she's the most incredible human being I've ever met. So thank goodness.
Yeah.
But
that's awesome.
Yeah. So she was a surprise in a few ways. Like I wanted her, but she came sooner than we had thought, and we weren't going to do it. But I'm so glad that it happened.
Yeah, that's
that
awesome.
Way. Yeah. So, my oldest son was in 4K. He turned 5 in November.
It's just like.
And then my 4th baby was born that March 2nd. So she'll be 8 on
soon
this weekend. Yeah. So.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
It's a lot.
I mean, there are ups to that. You know, doing that all at one time, and so we're a blended family, and my 4 youngest, I did the same thing. I didn't do the same thing, but I wanted them to have, you know, siblings close. I wanted them to all be friends, and for different reasons. So I grew up in the military, and I had 2 brothers and 2 sisters, and there's 15 years, same parents, 15 years between my brother, who's a year older, and then my youngest sister.
Yep.
But we all are close.
Okay.
And because when we moved, it was just us always. And I think that contributed to that. And that was my experience. So, you know, we're tying it back. And I always wanted my kids to be close. And so there are 8 years, I think, between oldest and youngest. And I used to do things like, okay, everybody get in the living room. You know, they'd all be doing their own thing. And then they'd come in and I'd say, for the next half hour, the 4 of you have to figure out, like, how to, you know. And my youngest is, like, in diapers. My oldest is like, okay. But the oldest 3 are girls, so it was very organized.
Yes, they had ideas.
He was very over-mothered and parented and, you know, dragged around. So, but yeah, that whole friend thing. And then what drives you to want to do that? So.
Yeah, totally. And like I mentioned, sibling dynamics are something else. And that is, and we've been working on that for their whole lives. I mean, I have this funny video. I was playing peekaboo with my second son, who was like 1, and my older son, who was 3. Like, you can hear him talking in the background, and then like his little face shows up in the video, and he's like, "I'm talking to you," and like knocks over the baby, and
out of here.
You know, like he wanted my attention, and you know, and we still like, and it's so interesting to watch the boys with each other and the girls with each other. And then, you know, there's so many different combinations of relationships between the four of them. And they're four completely different people. Like they could not be more different.
Yeah.
Same genetics, same households, same food, you know, same school, same everything. And they are so different from one another. And there's times where I'm like, this is nuts. Like they're fighting, they're, you know, it's like, who wants to sit on my lap? Well, then when one does, and the other one is like, well, no, I wanted to, and you know, we're fighting over who can, I mean, there's so many things, but they also like, sometimes will like cuddle up on the couch together. Or like this morning, even my 9-year-old daughter was helping my 7-year-old daughter get the Nutella off her face before school. And she couldn't get it. So she's like, let me just grab a wet paper towel and like, you know, and it's like those moments are so, like I know they have each other.
Yeah, that's the big, isn't that the end goal?
That's it.
Yeah. That's what we're really doing is we know someday, I mean, we don't know anything. We think we know and we try to predict and all of that. But we know someday they're going to need them and everyone else is a piece of us. And so they can be there and hopefully be there for each other, despite the disagreements or wrestling or whatever.
Yeah, and I think when I'm struggling through, there's one of me versus four of them, which is a daily struggle. I just try to ground myself in that goal of like, how do I not pit them against each other and not kind of say, well, your brother did it this way. You know, like I never compare them to one another. I try really hard to kind of nurture each of their passions. Like my oldest is very sports. He loves sports. He's an athlete. He wants to work out. He wants to like try all the sports. He wants to, and then, you know, my second son, like he tried that stuff, but it just team sports were just not really his thing. And he's recently discovered karate and is just like thriving. Like he's kind of found this, like he's athletic, but the team sport part wasn't for him. And my third daughter is a spicy one, very independent, very opinionated. And now she's started all of these businesses. She has a card making business, a bracelet making business, slime making business.
That's awesome.
She has a spa. She turned her bedroom into a spa where you like, and it's kind of nice. You can get nails done, face masks, a massage, like all sorts of things. So
what were you doing at 9? I mean, it wasn't that.
I was playing teacher.
Okay.
I remember having like stuffed animals around me.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
So,
but yeah. No, I wasn't.
But like kids at 9 now.
I know.
Well, they have so much example and they can pull from so many, you know, just watching others do it.
Yeah. And she does a lot of those like YouTube where she'll be like, Mom, can I video myself, my nighttime routine?
Oh, right.
I'm like, yeah, sure. Just like, you know, keep your jammies on.
We have some boundaries.
If the video's on, you know. And she'll like do the whole like, this is the product I use.
You put it in your hand in front.
So it's not blurry, and this is my, you know, like, and that's we could probably talk for an hour about screen time and YouTube and all sorts of things and what ages it's appropriate at. But honestly, our generation is the first to navigate this.
For sure, and it's hard.
It's hard, and I struggle with that. That's probably my biggest parenting struggle.
I think so too.
Is screens and what they're allowed to watch and how much time is okay and you know, the different ages. And that comes back to, you know, my 13-year-old son, like, yeah, he can watch a little bit more, but then my 7-year-old is like, well, why does he get to be on?
And then they just go over, and if they can't be on there, just like sidle over.
Look at I'll just watch his then.
Thanks. It is. And then I think we know what you could use it for. You know, like I love to have information just whenever. But that's not necessarily what it's being used for.
No, but then my son, my 11-year-old son is like, he told me this crazy science facts. He loves science too. He told me, I don't remember what it was because he has all sorts of fun science facts. And I'm like, where did you learn that? Well, it's one of the scientists I follow on TikTok.
Yay.
Like, oh, okay. So it's like, maybe they are.
Yeah, or maybe we just don't.
And my other son's watching like football plays and trying to like, he loves football. So he's increasing his knowledge of his passion. So that doesn't feel bad to me.
No, I know. Just, it's hard when the world's at their fingertips, you know, or has access to them too. So
yes.
And managing that on top of just the daily stuff is kind of overwhelming.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Exhale.
I know.
It's a lot.
That was a lot.
Okay, so after your daughter was born, second daughter, also 5 years.
Yeah.
Okay, that felt like a lot more years than that.
It did.
In the story, but 4 and 5.
Yeah,
and so then you were still doing daycare when she was born?
I was still doing daycare, but I was getting very, depressed is a strong word, but it wasn't a good fit anymore.
Well, it's isolating too.
I was very isolated. And very much so craving adult interaction and also using my brain power.
Right. Yes.
I'm a doer. I've always been pretty type A. I like to have challenges. And not that parenting isn't a challenge, it's a different kind of challenge.
For sure.
And my kids at the time were going to a preschool, a local preschool, and they opened up another classroom. And it was a part-time job, and I was like, this sounds perfect.
Yeah.
So I applied for that, and I got that job when my baby was 4 months old.
Okay.
So then I was teaching 2 days a week and doing in-home daycare the other 3 days. And getting my kids to their preschool. I mean, it was the same place, but they were in different classrooms. And my baby went to somebody's house, and it was a lot of moving parts at that time, but such a wonderful opportunity for me.
And tiptoe back in. I mean, you want the interaction, you know.
Yep.
It's not like, and you can do it all kinds of ways, and you probably could have done it another way, but if you're looking at the upside, it's like nice to kind of still have your foot here. You've got this 4-month baby, and so
it was a perfect transition back into the world of education. And I will say too, my time doing in-home daycare and my kids being little, I had daily epiphanies about early childhood development.
Oh, right.
And watching them problem solve and how they would interact with certain toys that I would have never thought of.
Oh, right.
I have a picture of this, but one time my spicy third-born daughter and one of my daycare kids who was her age and they were friends, they pulled all the books off the bookcase and we had hundreds of books. I mean, I'm a huge book. I love picture books. I read to them all the time, but I mean,
every book.
Hundreds.
Yes.
And I was like, okay, like we can do this. I'm like, okay, you two are gonna put all of these books back. I'm gonna go make lunch. You know, like we had the whole talk. So I come back in and they had put all the books back on the bookshelf, but they put them like horizontal.
Yeah. I was just gonna say, I can picture this
perfectly. Oh, my OCD, like do I change it? And or do I let them be proud of the work that they did? You know, that was one of my okay, it's more important that the kids are proud that they were able to clean this up, fix this problem. I left it.
Essentially, they did what you asked.
They did.
Because you said you're going to put these back on the shelf, but you didn't say vertically. So who are we to correct that?
I didn't.
Yeah,
I left
so
it.
That's awesome.
But it really challenged my own.
For sure.
Sense of order.
Yeah.
But it was okay. I don't remember what I was talking about before that little tangent, but childhood development.
Going back and being back in the workforce.
Yes. And so just watching the kids and interacting with them and watching my favorite thing about small children is when you can see the wheels turning and the light bulb moments on their faces. And you're probably going to laugh at this, and that's okay. I don't really like to play with kids.
Oh my gosh, I'm not going to laugh. I like to instigate kids to play and then see what they do.
Yes.
I mean, I will play with them.
Yep.
And I did play with my kids.
Yep.
But to me, it's more fun to observe what they're doing.
Yes.
Yeah.
To me, it's like I love setting up an environment for them.
Yes.
I love creating this like learning space with different activities and toys and arts and books and building materials, but then I like to back out and kind of encourage them. So my kids were always really good independent players.
That's great.
And I think that's a really great life skill, to be able to entertain yourself and to be able to take initiative to kind of do some of these hard things. And playing is hard for kids.
Yeah, especially when you're by yourself, you don't have somebody else to watch or throw something at or,
because it's all science experiments, like how does this work? What am I going to do with it? What happens if I do this? And so, that was, and then being able to teach preschool and almost formalizing that in my classroom.
Right.
And learning from, that was another incredible educator. They have some amazing teachers there who I learned so much from about development of that age group and just self-guided activities for kids and what skills they're learning through play. And it just was a very eye-opening time for me.
Yeah, from all angles.
Yeah.
It's just,
With my own kids, professionally, and I'll never forget this either. I was talking to a friend of mine who was also a mom of 4 and just saying like, we have some wonderful opportunities for kids in our community. Our park system is fantastic. We have a few, open gyms that, I took the kids to all the time.
Right.
Madison's right there, so you have lots of things to do there, but it just felt like our community was growing so quickly with small children, and what kind of opportunities would be helpful to those children and their families. So then my can-do personality took over. I'm like, what can I do to bring learning opportunities for early childhood age groups to our community? And so I got together with a small group of women, actually, mostly former educators, and talked about opening a children's museum in our community. And it was, I'm glad I didn't know at the time what a big undertaking it was.
It was huge. I kind of followed that from when it was being talked about. So
and we planned and before that, as part of my collecting information phase of the process, I took my kids, who at the time were between 2 and 7.
Okay.
And this was in 2019, so before the pandemic. And we went to as many children's museums as we could go to.
It's such a good idea. It's like going to the parks. Circle back.
And we went all over Wisconsin. Fun fact, Wisconsin has the most children's museums per capita in the country.
Didn't know that.
So I love that model for us. And we have a lot of small town, homegrown, very community based.
Oh, sure, yeah.
We have some big ones, but we have a lot of small ones too. So we went to a lot in Wisconsin, Minnesota, Iowa, and I just took pictures of them. Took notes, just watched them. I call it watching them in their natural habitat.
Yeah. And you had kids perfect ages to go and test it out.
Perfect. Yes. And some exhibits they would engage with for an hour or more, and I would have to pull them away. I'll never forget my son at a scarf tube where it's just wind blows through tubes and you put a scarf in and it goes through the tubes and you can see it and then it pops out. He did that for over an hour. Just put the scarf in, watched it, caught it. He would jump in, catch it, and get so excited, and then you put it right back in. Literally an hour.
So describe that a little bit, because I've seen it. Yeah. But it goes around and then it comes out above you.
Yeah, it comes out above you.
So you have to try to get it.
Yes. Yeah, and you watch it go through the tubes, and there's you can change the direction of the air so it can go in different ways. And then it comes out, it shoots out from the ceiling.
Right.
And it's a scarf, so it floats, so then you can kind of
you can
catch
time
it.
And
and he was just mesmerized.
Yeah. That's great.
But then there were some exhibits where they would push a button and it wasn't obvious what they was going to happen or how to engage, and they would move on. So it wasn't all they didn't love everything equally. And it was really helpful to me in thinking about what should go in a children's museum. And so I call them my market research team.
Yeah, I mean,
because they totally were.
Yeah.
And I would show them like different options of exhibits, and they would say, this one's much better, and they had reasons. And so every exhibit we chose was handpicked by my children.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, and the museum is great.
Yeah.
So they did a good job.
They did a fantastic job. And even though they're older now, I still get their opinions because just, again, kids' perspectives is so unique and honest and helpful.
And that's your clientele.
Totally.
So, I mean, even though the parents want to bring the kids there, if the kids aren't entertained, you can't engage, you're only going to be there a very short time.
Exactly.
So.
And so the museum, you know, we started the nonprofit, and obviously there's a lot of fundraising involved. I mean, I had all the ideas. I could spend a lot of money on ideas, but I didn't have the money. So we had a bunch of fundraising community events and exhibits, traveling exhibits, and all sorts of ideas. And then COVID came.
Yeah.
Not good.
Did you try to sell your house at the same time?
No. No, we're still in that same house. Thank goodness. No.
Yeah.
But I did, I mean, I had my 4 kids home, and then I took in another 7 kids.
Into your house?
Yes.
Oh my goodness.
Yes.
Daily?
Yep. I pulled everything down from my dining room, and we put up like a number line. We put up a sight word wall. They each had a spot at the dining room table with their Chromebook and their school supplies. I had a little preschool going because my youngest was 3 at the time. So we did, with a friend of mine, we did preschool. We had a couple kids with some pretty significant disabilities that we were trying to work with and help through.
That's amazing, Katey.
It was, we called it the Komoku schoolhouse.
It really, I mean, that's.
We put like a shower curtain up for the dining room so we could like close the classroom.
Okay.
We did lunch together. They played in my backyard for recess. So we full on embraced virtual learning. And
fully. I mean, I was home with 4. They were in all different, you know, middle school and then elementary school, and Connor had just started. So he didn't even know what school was. He was just like stepping on his iPad. I don't know. The teacher's face was there, but so was his little bare foot. So he didn't really know that. But I feel like we embraced it. Everybody had their own spot, but then we had 2 friends that would come over regularly because everybody was really like, who are you letting in your house? So, but it wasn't 7 kids and it wasn't organized. Like, I'm just trying to imagine doing that with what we were doing too already. So
it was a lot. And 3 of those kids were friends, siblings, and they were friends' kids because the teachers had to work from their classrooms. And,
oh yes, I remember.
And both parents were teachers, so they were like, "What do we do?"
Oh yeah.
So, again, it felt really good to help other parents during that time because they had to continue working.
Right.
But I kept going with the museum too. It felt like we had announced to the community that we were going to do this, and I didn't want to stop. And I also didn't want to pause because I didn't want to miss a group of kids that would benefit from it.
So up until that point, you'd done fundraising. Did you have?
Very little.
Oh, okay. So you were in the very early stages.
Very early, yeah. Okay. We only got our 501c3 status, which is nonprofit status, in November of 2019.
Oh, just before.
So just before.
Okay.
So we did one kind of smaller fundraiser in January of 2020. And then we were planning some bigger community ones. We wanted to do traveling exhibits, like have exhibits at different spots in the community to kind of show people like we want to create a space with more of this. So we had been in talks with exhibit designers to kind of help us design those. And then during COVID, I had a very frank conversation with a CPA who said, you know, like your financial goal for creating this space is really big. Like you might want to
simmer down.
And he still is involved in the museum, and I thank him all the time for his perspective because that was really an important one. And so we did cut down on the original plan quite a bit.
Right.
And we were able to fundraise through COVID. And I did most of that on my own, just via Zoom, talking to people and asking for money. And we did, oh God, that's a time.
It's hard to look back.
Oh
you
my
know?
gosh, it's hard to look back and think.
You have to do those things while it's going on. You have to pull through, you know, and you kind of don't know any better because you're in the throes of it.
Yeah.
But boy, when you get out of that, it's like, oh my gosh.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. And so we raised about $150,000. So we were able to purchase exhibits with that money. And then we borrowed the money that we needed to build out the space. And the space we're in now is really small for a children's museum. And at the time I said, this will be our starter home.
Right.
You know, this is a great size to start. At least we can open and kids can access the space and families can use it. And we just celebrated our 3rd birthday.
Yay, congratulations.
Yeah, we opened January 1st of 22. And we get told all the time that it's the perfect size.
Really?
All the time. Parents, because if you think, you know, they have a 2-year-old, they have a newborn, and kids want to do what they want to do. So they scatter.
And you can see them from wherever you are.
Yeah. And we were able to get 15 exhibits in the space.
It is a great museum. I mean, I've been there. It is great.
Yeah, and we, you know, like parents will say, like, I'm not worried about them getting lost.
Right.
But there's still plenty for them to engage with. And one thing that we did is we rotate exhibits every week.
Okay.
So 5 of our exhibits are different every week.
Oh, that's good.
Just different building pieces and different things in our magnet wall and different pretend plays. So like dollhouses, barns. This week it's dinosaurs. And that really made a huge difference.
Right.
And so kids will be engaged for 2, 3, sometimes 4 hours, and that's enough for that age. Then they need to eat and sleep.
And that's so nice for the parents too.
Yeah.
You know, because they're still with their kids. Yep. But it's just like you were talking about, setting up the space and letting them play.
Yes. And that's our role. And we made a conscious decision when we built the museum that there are no instructions for kids. Kids don't need to be told how to play. Sometimes they need reminder about safety and how to respect property and each other.
Yeah. But I think we forget too that that's a learning curve for kids.
Totally.
So, and I don't think all parents know that because no one told them, or they didn't have an example of somebody who did that also, that they watched do that, where like you can't tell a kid one time, don't do that, you know, especially at those young ages. And it's like, do I have to repeat myself? Yes. You do. Because you're creating and telling them what's important in the world. You're setting boundaries. They don't know how to select, you know, what to pay attention to. It's all just developing. And so I think that's great to, you know.
So we tell parents when they come in, like, the kids know what they're doing. And that always makes them laugh. And then we do have signs at each exhibit, because we'll say the kids will show you around when they're new. And they do. They know, you know, they can walk up to a magnet wall, or we had these like building rocks out. And, you know, they look pretty, I don't know what the word is I'm looking for, but like, what do you do with this? And kids will go over there and they immediately will like start building, or they'll make something up. I mean, their brains are just wired to use their hands to create and try things and
see what it can do.
Learn about cause and effect, and watch their peers. Oh, maybe I'll try it that way. And so we do have signs in the museum, but it's for grown-ups.
Right.
And it helps the grown-ups understand what's happening developmentally when
great.
Kids are playing. And each one's a little different. So, you know, like when they're engaged in imaginative play, you know, they're learning about the world. They're trying on different perspectives, conflict resolution, all of these things. And then there's STEM, you know, more STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math exhibits. And then they're learning about cause and effect and predictions. And so each exhibit hits on kind of a different developmental aspect that are equally as important.
Right.
You know, we have a huge climbing structure, so large motor, they're big muscles. Like kids need to move.
They need to move.
They need to move. They need to climb, they need to run, they need to jump. And so that sign talks about why large motor development is so important.
I love that you have that, because I think that allows parents to see their kids in a different lens, or with a different lens, because we know what you kind of can predict how your kid's going to act to a degree. But if you're trying to watch for them to use their large motors, you don't walk in there thinking like, I can't wait to see what they do with this engineering. But it guides the parents as much as it guides the kids for, what to look for and how to interact with things. I think that's great.
Yeah, that's really important to me. I mean, we are an educational institution, and I'm fascinated by how kids learn through play. And I think I'm going to tell you my 2 favorite fun facts.
Okay, yay.
So my first favorite fun fact is that 90% of the human brain is developed by the age of 5. And that's not knowledge, but those are the pathways that hold on to the knowledge.
Yes.
And the way those are developed is through opportunities. So seeing different things, trying different things, doing different things, being talked to, being read to, being taken places, and the grocery store counts. Being taken to watch the car get fixed or go to the car wash. I mean, those are all important experiences. You don't have to, do all of these fancy things, but just exposing kids to life and letting them dig in the mud and letting them get messy, which is hard. I mean, my mom she's from Germany, so she's very, she likes things a certain way, and it was very hard for her when we lived together because I let my kids be messy. I mean, we played with dish soap and water.
Yes.
We played with,
Slime.
Slime. Yes, I have lots of slime stains in my carpet. The one thing I don't let in is glitter.
Oh, because it's never getting out. You will be glittery forever.
But they just need to be given some freedom to do what they're innately designed to do. And I think, so I'm fascinated by that. And then my second favorite fun fact is that 1 million neurons are making connections every second for the first 3 years of life.
That feels like something that should be told to parents when they leave the hospital. I mean, I study psychology, and these things are familiar to me, but if you don't intentionally try to find that information, and so many people are leaving the hospital or adopting or whatever it is and not understanding how critical. That's why when I say like 0 to 5 and you can't find yourself, it's okay. Everything about you should be pouring into them and helping them become, members of society that are positive and contribute and
But where is your community to help you do that?
Right.
That's what moms need.
Yeah.
They need other moms.
It's right here.
Yeah.
It's the show.
Yes.
And things like it. But yeah, that is true.
And you need other moms, and you need people, older moms, who can tell you, like, I know this is hard, but it's going to be okay.
Yes.
And you need community spaces like the museum, like the library, like schools, where people understand that parenting is hard, and it is a lot of pressure because it is a big deal.
The biggest deal, yeah.
But how do we connect parents with those resources? And we have parents who meet up for play dates at the museum, and even parents who didn't come together but end up talking.
Right.
And and I think about when I was home doing daycare by myself, and I didn't have that.
Right.
And it was so hard.
Yeah.
And just being able to find people who are going through it at the same time as you is such a gift.
For sure.
And I remember my mom saying, because I would talk to her because we lived together.
Yeah.
And she was such a huge part of my support system, always, but also during that time. And she would say, just be patient. Like because I would just say, I don't feel like I have any friends. Nobody understands. Like I can't get out of the house. And she would say, you're gonna make friends with your kids' moms.
Yes.
Your kids' friends'
moms.
And I didn't believe her at the time.
Right.
And then my kids started in preschool and 4K, and that's where I made some of my very best friends that I have now. That became such an important part of my support system as a mom.
And sports teams,
Yes.
activities.
Yes.
And I think there's some apprehension too, even when your child, you know, those first days of like the team.
Yep.
And you show up and it's like, moms are so funny because we're so giving.
Yeah.
Like we can't wait to help somebody with something.
Yep.
But also, we talk about this in almost every episode. It's like, I'm not going to show up and ask you for something.
Yep.
I might need it.
Yep.
And you probably want to help me.
Yes.
So it's that strange, you know, I need to show you that I've got it together.
Yep.
I actually don't. Look in my car. We barely got out of it to get here
Yep.
to the field, you know. So it's something like I need to show you that so that you think I'm worthy of being here, something like that.
Totally. And I have that instinct to do that too. But I actually try really hard to show up as my hot mess self.
Yeah.
And I've found that that's like, I've made so many better connections with other moms that way.
Well, it's being so genuine.
Yeah. Just to say like, oh my gosh, like,
How'd I get here?
yeah, this one is, you know, like just had a meltdown in the car, or I left her in the car to finish her meltdown.
Yeah, she's still over there.
And just like I've found over the years that just telling those stories to other moms at school drop off or on the sideline of soccer or wherever is just such a relief to both of us.
Well, you're being vulnerable. You're allowing them to be vulnerable. Yeah. That feels good because it's hard to uphold that all the time.
Yeah.
So
yeah, any advice I would give is just be genuine with it. Don't try to look like you have it all together. Because nobody does.
Nobody does. And you don't know what you might find out if you just allow yourself to be vulnerable or just ask for help or put yourself in a situation at the museum where the sign's telling you and you say to yourself, you know, maybe they do know something I don't.
Yeah.
I haven't interacted with this before.
Yeah, and even, you know, at the museum, I'm, you know, for the moms who have a baby and a toddler and they have to take their toddler to go potty, I'm like, I'll hold your baby.
Yeah.
You know, like
Yes.
lean on and, you know, ask for the wipe. This happens
Oh
all
my
the
gosh,
time.
I know.
You know, like you forgot your wipes or you didn't know you had run out in the diaper bag and you're like, crap, what do I do now? I mean, when you need a wipe, you need a wipe.
We need you to ask for the wife.
Just ask. Like, I'm so happy to share them. I'm
Yeah,
happy to share snacks. I'm happy to share diapers. Like, all of those things. I think, like you said, it's so true. Like, moms want to support one another.
And you're right about that.
Yeah.
So do you want to say, so the museum is here in Sun Prairie. I mean, like I say on every episode, in case we go global.
Yeah.
You can come to Sun Prairie and go to the Children's Museum. So this is third birthday you just had.
Yeah.
And you had an event for that, and that went really well.
It went really well, yep. So the museum, like all of them, is a nonprofit. And we do have a revenue stream in terms of daily admission and membership and birthday parties. But we try really hard. Our biggest goal is to be accessible to everybody.
Okay.
It is extremely, these opportunities are extremely important for young children, all young children.
Yes.
And it shouldn't matter if their parents can afford it or not.
Right.
So we have an all access program where anytime we're open, people can come and pay what they can.
Okay.
We'll never turn anybody away. We do that for memberships too. But we operate in a deficit every year. It's a $100,000 deficit, which is pretty small. I mean, some museums have $1 million deficits that they're fundraising for, and this is all nonprofits. But so we do a few different things to raise that money, but one of them is events. And we have an adult-only event, which we just had last weekend, and it was stressful getting ready for it, and selling tickets and silent auction and all sorts of things, but it ended up being a beautiful night. And just brought tears to our eyes of people who were there to support this mission. And the mission is not the museum. The mission is kids.
Yes.
And it's young kids. And, you know, like my new favorite line of all is every child has the right to early childhood educational opportunities. It's not a luxury, it's a right.
It's the most important time.
And, you know, we need to create these spaces for kids and families. And because of the generosity of our community, we are able to have that. And that's a big deal.
That's an enormous deal. And thank you for taking that on. All the little babies and kids that have come through there.
Yeah, we've served over 150,000 people.
That's awesome. And you have people coming from everywhere
all over
now? I mean, it's out there.
Yep, we do a free day once a month. So a business sponsors, we call it Day of Play, and it's the third Thursday. And that's the one day where we track where people are coming from.
Okay.
And they come from all over Wisconsin, hours
awesome.
away. Mostly Dane County, but we have lots of people who are coming from all over the place, which is wonderful and so sad at the same time.
Because they don't have something like that.
And every child has the right to something like this. And this is a piece of it, like we talked about, parks and libraries and, this whole ecosystem of opportunities for kids.
And every child has the right, and you're doing what you can within your circle to impact that.
Yeah, and I've had people reach out. There's someone from another community in Dane County who is interested in talking about like a satellite location in their community.
Oh, sure.
So again, inspiring people to do this where they live too, to broaden our impact.
And do what they can within their means.
Exactly.
Yeah. So you have a website?
Yep, website. It's explorecm.org.
Okay.
You can just Google Explore Children's Museum too. Yeah, all the information we have, our hours. There's a couple of videos that talk about the museum and our mission and our impact, pictures of the exhibits. We have a newsletter. We're on Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn.
Okay.
So that's another place to find information. And yeah, I think, like I said, we're an educational institution, so the museum itself is there for kids to learn through play, and then also we're on a mission to help grown-ups understand how important early childhood opportunities are. There's the video that we just did at our event on Saturday was all about kids who have high quality early childhood opportunities do better in school, higher graduation rates, more earnings as adults. I mean, all of these studies exist that it makes a huge impact. So we just need to catch up in helping parents understand that and just knowing what they can do.
And I think too, this isn't just for people who have young kids right now. This isn't just for moms. These children are the children, in our communities that are going to grow up. And everything they do impacts everything as they grow. So for the people who think they're separate from this, you're not, because everything is interconnected. So even if you don't have small children, you still can contribute to this, whether it's financially or whatever. You should
volunteering.
Check out. Yeah, they can find all that information on your website and can make an impact.
Totally. And children belong to all of us. They really do.
Yes, it does.
Because they are going to grow up and be your doctor and your banker and your nurse and work at the restaurants you like to go to and fix your car and handle your taxes. And we want them to be prepared for all of that. And our world is getting more and more complicated, and they've got a lot of problems. We've got a lot. I mean, our environmental, financial, all of it. And these are the kids that are going to grow up and be faced with solving these issues. And I have faith that they can do it. I am inspired by the kids that come to the museum every single day. And I was asked, what do you feel when you're sitting here watching, kids play? And it's hope. Yeah. They give me hope. They're so smart and thoughtful, and they solve problems, and they are happy, and they bring so much joy and energy, and I just know they have so much potential. And I'm like, okay, these people are going to they're going to fix us all, and it's very inspiring. So,
well, thank you for creating that space for them. Your story has
been a joy.
Yeah, your story is great. So one more question before we go, and since usually I close out with, do you have advice? But you've given a lot of helpful information, I think insight, and through your stories and your experience, I think it shows, we're not alone.
Yeah.
Even when you feel alone and you're in the daycare and, a million kids at your house, women are, waiting. Other moms are waiting to be friends with you and to connect with you. And so I appreciate that. So the show is called Moments of Strength, and I think you've given us many examples of that. And I always like to ask, what is that thing that, can you identify anything that helped you get through, maybe like your toughest moments? So what is that thing? Because we have it, and some of us can access it more readily than others. Some of us are more practiced or have been through things that have forced us to call on that.
Yeah.
What do you do, or what is that thing that helps you? Do you have something like that?
Well, I'm just thinking as you're talking, and I think it's evolved over time.
Sure. Okay, yeah, that's great perspective.
And so I think for many years and forever, one thing that has always helped me is leaning on those closest to me. And for most of my life, that was my mom. So when I would call her and like, I need to talk about it, and I'll call a friend. And so when something's bothering me, I really need to find somebody close to me and talk to them. That's always been something that's helped me. Also, I think now looking back on my life and my journey through having small children, I tried to escape a lot of tough things by doing.
Being busy.
And that I'm learning, wasn't the best strategy, because I didn't talk about this, but I'm actually been going through a divorce for the last year and a half. And that's really challenged all sorts of parts of me personally, and especially being a mom.
Right.
And it's been so hard to be resilient myself and help my kids figure out how to do that for them. And so one thing that keeps coming up in my own therapy is just sitting with feelings. And that I'm not good at.
I am with you.
And that I'm really trying. And she says, try to figure out where you're feeling it physically and just let it sit there, because I like to do it and I like to problem solve and I like to get past it and okay, this is bothering me, so what am I going to do about it?
You just can intellectualize it.
Yeah, totally.
And then find an answer. I feel that.
And what I'm working on really, and I'll say to her, I don't want to do that. I don't want to feel that. That doesn't feel good.
Right.
I want to figure out how to get rid of that feeling.
Yes.
And she says, if you do that, it'll come up later.
Yeah.
And, looking back now, there were times where I've yelled at my kids or I've lashed out. And it was these kind of feelings that I didn't sit with that were coming back, and that's not good for anybody.
No.
And she says, you can tolerate those feelings. And so now that's kind of my mantra to myself. When something's bothering me or not going well, I'll just say okay, this feels yucky. I feel it in my stomach, or I feel it in my chest. And I'll try to just notice it. And then I'll say to myself, you can tolerate this. You can tolerate this feeling. And, this is new for me, but I'm trying really hard to pay attention to that and just be able to tolerate it and know that some things are hard and you don't have to get rid of it.
Well, look at all the, not to get personal here, but all the things that you've been through and done and accomplished, and the children and your path with kids, with special needs, and just being drawn to helping everyone. And then what you went through as a child, a positive childhood, but you still, had to navigate things that were imposed upon you. So you can do that. Yeah. You personally, and I'm not your therapist, but I just went on this journey with you, and I'm really confident that yes, you can do that. And it is hard, and life is hard, and we should expect that to a certain degree. And sometimes we can't foresee everything, and we find ourselves in positions that are just I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. And if your kids are involved, you feel everything they feel, plus you're feeling what you feel, and you want them to have less difficulty.
Yep.
And sometimes it's just helping them sit with their feelings that are difficult.
Oh, yeah.
It's harder for us to do that if we don't do it ourselves. And so I recognize that so much and feel that for you. And I appreciate you sharing that. And reaching out to other people is so helpful, I think.
Yeah.
You know, if you even just have one person. And if you don't have someone, like, reach here.
Yeah.
I've had people on here, everyone is willing to talk to whoever needs something.
Me too.
So
yeah, totally. And I'm trying to do it with my kids too. I'm trying to help them so they don't have to figure this out at 41. And so my words with myself when my kids are upset are validate, like tell them like, yeah, this is hard.
Yes.
This doesn't feel good. And empathize. Like, you know, if my friend said that to me, I would feel hurt too. You know, don't tell them it's going to be okay. Don't tell them like, let's do this to get over it.
Or distract.
You know? Yeah, distract. Like, no, like let them feel it, validate their feelings, and then just say, yeah, this is tough.
Yeah. That was a lesson I had to learn too. Like, that's hard when you're a person who busies themselves to sort of escape. So
totally.
So thank you for sharing that. I really appreciate it. And thank you for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah. Good luck with the museum. And
yeah, it'll be great. It's, you know, a labor of love, but
yeah. So it's a labor of love with a lot of work.
A lot of work. But, you know, I was a teacher, and that is a thankless job. And I am so grateful for all of our teachers. Like, I'm just going to, I mean, they are literally superheroes. And my job at the museum is not thankless. I mean, we get thanked all the time. And it's really, really nice.
That's great.
It's really nice to have that gratitude.
Yeah,
so,
I love that.
Yeah.
Well, you're creating something fantastic for people, so.
Thanks.
Yeah.
That's it.
Well, thank you for coming on and helping me kick off season 2.
Yeah,
I appreciate
so
that. And thank you for tuning in and watching. Remember to keep your perspective, but don't be afraid to step into somebody else's like we did with Katey today. Be resilient. Keep showing up even when it's hard. We learned today a few ways to do that, and that there are always people that are willing to assist if you need it. Continue to pursue and show up and get after it and enjoy everything you can about maximizing your time in your life for you and your kids. Don't feel alone. You're in a group of about 2 billion around the world, and we are here for you. Thank you.